Monster Hunter Phoenix is the name of my presentation, as we will be discussing the origins of the Phoenix, or Firebirds in general, finding where they came from, and the inspirations behind them, and what they have inspired throughout the years. The story of the Phoenix is originated in ancient Greece. The earliest known clear tale involving the Phoenix is from the Precepts of Chiron, where a centaur by the name of Chiron describes the life of the Phoenix to Achilles, including how long the Phoenix lived, around 972 times the average man's lifespan. Taking the estimates of an average man from ancient Greece, that they would live roughly around 35 years, taking the estimate to be around 34,020 years. In Greece, the legend of the Phoenix would soon be disputed. A historian by the name of Herodotus had heard of a legend similar to the Phoenix from Egypt, and claimed the legend from Egypt had no credible sources, describing it as a phoenix that had brought its old corpse after rebirth to Heliopolis every 500 years when it rebirths itself. While it is disputed on what kind of bird the phoenix would have been, it is likely that it was either a heron or an eagle. Now, these two birds have different flying speeds, vastly different, so the bird could have made the distance of 1,596 kilometers or 991 miles in around either 66.5 hours or 7.8. With this idea of another phoenix coming from Egypt, that leads into Benu. While not very often spoken of figure in Egyptian mythology, Benu is of high priority. The Egyptians believed that the soul was made up of many individual pieces, one of which being the Ba, or personality. That was the key to each person being unique. Even the gods, such as Ra, had such pieces. Benu is believed to be the Ba of Ra, the sun god. Benu is actually believed to be the original Firebird, and not the Phoenix. Benu comes from the word weben, meaning to rise brilliantly or to rise, and Benu acts as the sun and is the sun, as it is the soul of Ra, or at least part of it, being the Ba. As discussed by Herodotus, it lived in Heliopolis and was housed in the temple of Atum Ra, which is where Herodotus came up with the idea that the Phoenix migrated towards Heliopolis and would then die there. In the Egyptian lore, Benu would die and rebirth itself from ash every 500 years. The bird would then build a sort of ball of myrrh, stuff its old body within the ball of myrrh, and then carry that ball of myrrh back to Heliopolis, which reminds me of Monty Python and the Holy Grail. As spoken on earlier, Benu and the Phoenix have both been depicted in many types of culture as either an eagle or a heron, but Benu came in many shapes throughout the time of Egyptian mythology and evolved throughout it. Most commonly seen as a heron, as discussed, the text from the Old Kingdom depicted Benu as more of a songbird, originally described similarly to a yellow wagtail. It was then thought that it could have been a kingfisher, more like, due to the way the dyes had aged on the hieroglyphic wall. Now, in more modern years, specifically in 1977, we have found remains of a giant heron, namely the Bennu Heron, as inspired by the legend of Benu. It is estimated to have lived around 2700 to 1800 BCE during the Al-Nar period. This giant heron, bigger than the biggest species of heron alive today, the Goliath heron, stood around 2 meters or 6.6 feet tall, with a wingspan of 2.7 meters or 8.9 feet tall. Now, it has been spoken about in our class plenty of times that the Greeks and the Egyptians had interacted many times, and that the Greeks had actually borrowed many things from Egyptian and Mediterranean culture. So the idea that the phoenix is Benu is not unreasonable to believe. But the idea of a firebird is fairly common actually throughout the world. And many different cultures share some kind of phoenix or Benu, as I may or may not describe them as throughout this presentation, in either of three ways. It is unknown just how so many legends came about of Benu-type birds, but there is a very wide margin of what may count as a firebird legend. Even if not directly related, firebirds are present in many mythologies, and most often are put into similar symbologies, such as fire or links to fire, where they are either born of fire, comprised of fire, or have fire-based abilities. They could be rebirthed, with a symbol of either literal or spiritual, or as well as both rebirthing processes. One of the more obvious ones besides fire, the firebird must of course be a bird. It doesn't necessarily have to be all of the above, but of course a firebird must be a firebird as spoken previously. First on our list of other firebirds we have the bison. Now obviously from the picture you can see that it is reminiscent of a large rooster with a large coxcomb, bright red and glowing. This bird is known to spit fire that does not burn and is cold to the touch even, but glows very bright. When it flaps its wings, it makes a basa basa sound. When it makes this sound, a human will often be drawn to look at it, but when a human tries to find the bison, when it hears the basa basa, it will vanish into thin air. Now the bird might look sort of familiar to some of you, so we're going to play a little game called Who's That Pokemon? Got your guess? Well, that's right. This is Torchic. Bison is believed to be the exact inspiration for Torchic, being a fire-based bird that often stands on one leg and is from Japanese folklore. If you just didn't get that right, don't worry, we'll be playing again shortly. Moving on to up north, we have the Slavic tale of the Firebird, a very original name, I can assure you. This bird is often the MacGuffin in a hero's quest in Slavic fairy tales. It will often have the quest item being a firebird's feather that does not cease being aflame even after being plucked from the bird's body, and will always grow a bright light that can fill a large room. The possible real-life inspiration for the firebird in the Slavic fairy tales could be the golden pheasant. As you can see between the two images present on the screen, you can roughly see a correlation between them. Moving back down, we're going back to China with the Feng Huang. Formed in Hongjiang around 7,000 to 8,000 years ago, these birds are thought of as royalty among other birds, thought to reign supreme and higher than every other bird in existence or in mythology. Now, each different part of this bird holds a different meaning to it with the symbology. We have the head that represents virtue, the wings for duty, the back for propriety, the abdomen for credibility, and the chest for mercy. They are often depicted to be close to or near Chinese dragons, often representing masculinity and femininity. The dragons being masculine and the Feng Huang being more feminine with their very bright plumage. Now, are you ready for our next round of Who's That Pokemon? Go on, take a guess. Got your answer? All right. If your guess was the legendary Pokemon Ho-Oh, then you are correct. As you can see, it has a wonderful rainbow feather plumage with a crest and all of its parts holding a very specific glow to it. More modern interpretations of the phoenix have led to many different areas. As you can see on the screen here, we have the phoenix known as Fawkes in Harry Potter, a pet belonging to Dumbledore, of course. Fawkes was a highly intelligent male phoenix that was Dumbledore's animal companion, which served with him for 59 years. Its tears were known to possess healing properties, which helped save Harry's life after his arm was punctured by a basilisk fang with its venom. And Fawkes came to Dumbledore's aid in fighting Voldemort. Following Dumbledore's death, Fawkes sang his lament over the grounds of Hogwarts and left to never be seen ever again. We also have the Phoenix King, Fire Lord Ozai from Avatar: The Last Airbender, who wanted to set the world in a blaze of fire, and as the strongest, he felt that the name of the Phoenix King was very fitting. We then have Jean Grey from the X-Men series. She was thought to be dead, but was then reborn in a brilliant flame that was a part of a galactic universal force that by chance was also called the Phoenix Force. We then have the Phoenix from Supernatural, who is from an episode where Sam and Dean travel back in time to get more bullets for a special gun that is built to kill demons. The Phoenix takes the form of a man in the Old West and is killed by Sam and Dean to harness his ashes, which creates bullets for the Winchester gun by using it instead of gunpowder. Next up, we have the Phoenix from Ark Survival Evolved. This is an exclusively incredibly rare creature only found on the map of Scorched Earth, a desert map that has been riddled with sand, death, and of course the sun. Very fitting for the environment. The Phoenix is a genetically engineered creature that was created based on the legends of the Phoenix. This Phoenix cannot touch the ground as part of the Phoenix legend, and is only thought to have been tamed by the strongest of tribes on the Scorched Earth Ark. Another interpretation of the Phoenix, as seen through tabletop game, I'm sure you've heard of it, Dungeons and Dragons, D&D, however you might say it, is a gargantuan elemental monster that is known to be incredibly wise and has been in the game since the first edition of D&D. Many agreed that the Phoenixes are champions of good. Others might say they're champions of destruction, but mostly the ones on saying destruction claim the ones that claim destruction are the ones that the Phoenix deems as evil. Whether you are on either side of it, the Phoenix is a very worthy threat, but will only attack if provoked or disturbed. The Phoenix has a very specific hatred of the undead because it is not correct resurrection, as opposed to the Phoenix, which is resurrected perfectly each time. Whether speaking specifically on Benu or Phoenix or Feng Huang, there is an obvious correlation between them all that Benu can be traced back to as the origin of the fiery bird in so many different tales and legends that we still celebrate today and can easily recognize through everything. It is a wonderful mythical creature that has inspired many throughout centuries and will continue for even more centuries. through many more centuries in the future as we continue to evolve in folklore and mythology of our own. This, of course, is the end of my presentation. I thank you for watching, and I hope you learned something about folklore, mythology, and the wonderful ways that it can be interpreted by many different cultures.